So we're just going from top to bottom on the measurement tab here. So we've already done the base alignment, the clearance plane. We're going to ignore multiple report, measurement plan editor features, and temperature compensation for now. Now this temperature compensation looks like we're doing something wrong because it's highlighted in yellow, but really it's basically just a little thermocouple, like a little piece of brass that you can put on the machine that'll read out the temperature and adjust the reported sizes based on the temperature of the room. We don't even have that sensor on our machines, so at least on our machines this will always be yellow. So you would think you'd do the characteristics tab next, but I actually like to save that for last. I like to build out features next, because features are the things that are actually measured on the part. And we have to measure things on the part to be able to output characteristics. Now, looking at our example here, characteristics are all of these L numbers that you see right here, L1 through L6. So we need features to be able to output our characteristics. So the flow that I like to use is start on the CMM tab, fill it out fully, top to bottom, move to the measurement tab, fill it out fully, top to bottom. We'll skip over characteristics for now, and we'll go to the features tab. Now notice as we were building our automatic alignment, or base alignment, if you will, that automatically created plane 1, 2D line 1, and point 1. So what other features do we need to be able to output these dimensions? Well, if we just go in order, for no particular reason, we would need L1 next. So L1 means that we need to measure at least 1 point on the right side of the part. Now, we can have a later tutorial that'll talk more about the technically correct way of measuring these dimensions. Maybe we would want to have an entire plane measured on the left side and an entire plane measured on the right side. But in the interest of keeping this real simple for this tutorial, I'm going to measure each feature in the simplest way possible, and it is not necessarily a best practice, and it is not necessarily going to give you the most precise results. But at a minimum, to measure L1, I already know where the left side of the part is because I already touched 1 point over here to set up the coordinate system. That was the base alignment. So all I have to do is touch 1 point on the right side of the part for L1. Right? Now, it's also important to note that there are a bunch of different strategies we can use here to do this. We could touch that point, and because many of these measurements are direct characteristics, we could simply output the X location immediately after we touch it. However, I'm going to do all the features first. I'm going to touch all the points that I need first, and then I'm going to output the characteristics afterwards. You can actually set up characteristics as you're going, and it can save some time to do that once you're more advanced. But at a minimum, we need a point on the right side of the part. To do L2, well, I already know where the front of the part is because we set our coordinate system to a line on the front of the part. So I'll simply touch 1 point on the back edge. For L3, I'll need to touch a point on the fixture plate, and that will give me the overall height of the part. And I think that's all I can remember for right now. So for L1, we're touching the right side of the part. For L2, we're touching the back of the part. And for L3, we'll touch a point somewhere around here on the fixture plate, being careful not to touch one of the tapped holes that's on the fixture plate. So let's go do that. So actually, I want you to be able to see what Calypso is doing here. Now, if you have some extra windows pop up in Calypso, you can close out of your automatic stylus system change that was left over from the video I made just before. You can close out of your report results. Really, the only two windows you need are Calypso and the stoplight window. So if that gets cumbersome, I recommend you close all of the others. So we're in Calypso here, and I'm going to go take a point that is on the right side of the part. So I drive over using the joystick, and notice that I'm kind of staying towards the back of the part to get out of the way of this clamp that I've put there. And I'm simply going to drive into the part. Now the features window pops up automatically, and we'll file this automatically as point number 2. If I wanted to output my characteristic, if it's a direct characteristic, at this time I could. I could turn on the X and I could set my tolerances. I'm going to save that. I think the flow is a little easier if you do all the features first, do characteristics later, at least when you're new. So I'll say OK here. Notice that we've added point number 2. We can see point number 2 on the graphics screen over here, and in the characteristics list we have nothing. All right, so point number 2 is done. Now we're going to go touch point number 3, and point number 3 will be on the back of the part here, and then we'll go touch point number 4, which will be on the fixture plate itself. So I touch point number 3. Now it's really tempting to go touch point number 4 because I already have it queued up. I already know what I'm going to do next. However, if you go touch point number 4 without hitting OK first, it will combine point 3 and point 4 together and create a line. That's not what you want. We'll say OK here. Notice that we are classified as point 3. You can manipulate your graphics screen to see where that is in space. And then we'll come down and drive directly into the surface plate. And we'll just say OK for now. And now we can see we've added point number 4 down here. So looking back at our blueprint, we can output L1, L2, we can do L3. L4 is going to be the distance from this back edge here to this cutout. Now I already have a point on this right edge here. I'm going to make the assumption, and it's not really a good idea to make this assumption, but I'll make the assumption anyway, that the distance, or I'm sorry, that this top edge here and this top edge here are collinear with each other. So I'll reuse this point that I have back here. So I don't need to touch anything to tell me where the top is. I know where that is. I'm going to have to touch a point at the bottom of that cutout. Okay, that'll give me L4. I'll go do that right now. And in the real world, I'm just driving over and touching a point at the bottom of that slot. As I do that in Calypso, the features window opens up. I say OK. You can see point number 5 that I've added here. And now I need to output L5. So I need to know the left side of this slot and the right side of this slot. So to touch the left side of the slot, I'll come over and touch one point. In Calypso, the features window opens back up again. You can see where I've touched over here on the graphics screen. You say OK. I also need a point on the right side of the slot. So I'll come over and touch that. And I will again hit OK. So point number 6 is the left side of the slot. Point number 7 is the right side of the slot. That allows me to output L5. Now for L6, that'll be a combination of the point that I just touched and the other point that I had already touched when I did L1. So it looks to me like we have every single piece of information that we need to output these characteristics. Now we're going to output the characteristics in the order that they show up in the on the blueprint. So L1, L2, L3, etc. So for L1, I need something on the left side of the part, which will actually be the base alignment, and I need something on the right side of the part, which will be, I think, point number 3, but I don't remember for sure. So the nice thing is I can use the graphics screen to help me with this. I see my base alignment over here is on the left side. I can see point number 2 appears to be the point that I touched on the right side of the part. So I can do this a couple different ways. I'll open up the Characteristics tab, and I will go to Size, Standards, X. That creates the X value, and I will double click on that. And for Feature, I'm going to click on Switch to Feature menu, and I'll go over and select the feature that I want from the list. Now, if this pop-up shows up on you, you can just X out of it. Or maybe you can't. You can scroll down through the list to get a preview of what you're looking at. And in this case, I'm just using the arrows on the keyboard to do that. Here, I'm coming over to point number 2, and I will say OK. Notice that that gives me the nominal value. That is what I should have measured here, or what the part should be, rather. These numbers are not marked on the blueprint, but let's say this is 1 inch 875, and the tolerance is also not specified. We'd have to look on the blueprint to make sure. But in this case, let's just put in plus or minus 5 thousandths of an inch. Now, it is important to note that this minus sign right here is really important. That will make your dimension report look incorrect if you have not done that, if you haven't added in the minus. So say OK.